I'm glad you mentioned that. So next week, CactusCon comes. We have on February 1, Monday, we have a guest speaker talking about virtual reality. And then CactusCon comes up on February 5 and 6. So there'll be a lot of things going on there. And we're teaching a Python workshop. So it's extra credit to attend that, whether you do my workshop or not. Anyway, check it out. It should be good. And there's a few news articles that I thought would be fun. There's a lot of storm about GameStop. People are getting mad. The small investors bought this GameStop company, driving the price way up, thus causing hedge funds to lose a ton of money, because if you're short a stock, you can lose a lot of money. When you're short a stock, you borrow stock and then you return it later, paying the price that comes later. So if the stock was down at like $5 and it goes up to like $100, you lose $95 per stock. So hedge funds have lost a ton of money. And this is all because of small investors on Reddit getting together and say, let's all buy this stock and just push it up. And they pushed it way up. There was a graph in one of these stories. Guess I ain't got the right chart, but it's gone up by like a factor of 8 or 10 in a couple of weeks. And now the Robinhood has ceased trading in it, and people are getting really mad at Robinhood. And the Robinhood CEO tried to explain this, and I saw his explanation in video, and it made no sense at all. But actually, I know a little bit about finance. I see reasons why you can't do this. If you go to a casino and you bet on the poker game, there is a maximum limit for the poker pot. And there's a reason, because if the house has to pay all of that out, they don't have enough money. They have to limit their risk. And here, this thing was selling for like $10. Now it's at $350. So the financial exposure of handling trades that large is large, and it probably triggers legal requirements, reserves and stuff. So, I think I kind of understand how a company handling investments that get so large so fast says, we're likely to get blamed for this. We're likely to be perceived as having somehow caused this and liable for some of the financial damages being caused by this. And we really don't want to play this game anymore. Yeah, 88,000 increases, and people bought options, so they didn't actually buy the stock. Okay, I see some good stuff in comments. I know a lot of people are screaming and yelling about it, and a bunch of them are saying that the trading house Robinhood had no right to cancel the trading. But I might have done the same thing. I'd say, look, whatever's going on here is crazy, and I don't want to be involved in it. There's going to be tons of people lose money. There's going to be tons of screaming and yelling and lawsuits and blame. And I'm not going to be enjoying being the guy in the middle. But anyway, now they're all in trouble for not letting them trade. So on it goes. This commission says we have a moral imperative to explore AI weapons because they believe that robots will make less mistakes than humans in shooting off weapons, which seems to me to be a highly questionable statement. We've seen how Teslas just plow right into fixed objects. Robots are not so perfect at doing things humans can do. Robinhood is not a trading house. It's an intermediary. Yeah, that's a fair statement. Okay. Yep. But anyway, they're trying to withdraw from this activity and not having much luck. I think that one thing that will happen is the hedge funds will crash, and they will blame Robinhood for doing this and then boycott them or punish them or sue them or something. It might be one of the reasons they don't want to do it. Anyway, the iPhone 12 apparently has strong magnets in it because they're saying they will stop your pacemaker. They got a list of them. So, and I haven't heard this statement about previous versions of the iPhone, so I'm guessing the iPhone 12 has more magnets than the other iPhone versions. And it is something I've heard quite a bit of lately is that pacemakers are susceptible to just ordinary magnets. And that seems like, in retrospect, a questionable design decision, but that is how they're built. And so this one here, different magnets, inductive charging coils. So the iPhones have inductive. Well, the iPhone itself doesn't have a charging coil. That would just be the charger, right?
Well, it's the new Magna-Grip MagSafe charging capacity that magnet plus the charging interface plus the charging coils create the electromagnetic field that's problematic for pacemakers. So when you take that new charger and put it in your breast pocket near your pacemaker, it creates a loop.
Well, the charger, but not the phone itself.
No, the phone itself, the back of the phone now has a magnet in it that magnetically secures the charger to it.
Oh, okay. That's like my Macs have that. My Macs have a MagSafe.
Yeah.
Thing. That's enough to, that's not a very powerful magnet. That's enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can screw up a pacemaker with a 9-volt battery if you're dedicated.
Man. Yeah, well, it seems like
I'm not a creep, by the way. I used to work with the volunteer firefighters that we had to treat that when people did that to themselves. So
my goodness. Well, I appreciate the information. And but it seems like they ought to design the pacemakers to be better than that. Yeah, well, anyway, so this one here is interesting in that this guy went online and he posted memes, and the memes said, you can vote by sending a text message to this phone number, and he got about 1,000 people to vote that way. So of course that means they don't really get to vote. And now he's being punished for this because, we have free speech in America, but there's some limit to what you can say. And you can't say something that is like outrageous and misleading and harmful. And so they are suing him based on that. So even the things you post on social media that might seem like throwaway might get you in trouble. Now I see more statements. China train, suffered from flash coding. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, there was a Chinese, I remember Chinese Japan. Yeah, it was ran on Flash, so they had to put a pirate version of Flash. Yeah, well, I mean that's not only is it malicious, but it's messing with voting, which I think is protected. So it's misleading. There's a special crime interfering with people's attempt to vote, I think. So he's in trouble now. Now there's been a story going around the Twitter sphere of a North Korean attack group that contacts security researchers to exploit them and trick them. And here's a guy with a story. This may have been this group. Someone came to him and said he was developing a zero-day exploit, provided him a write-up. They sent him a Visual Studio project so he could build the code. And he found the Visual Studio project was backdoored and gave the guy entry into his machine. And he said he worked in a virtual machine suspecting something was up, but he's now trying to track this guy down. And they apparently have a bunch of these. So this has happened several times that they target security researchers because a lot of them have security clearance and they have valuable information, and you can get them with spear phishing because you write a real security exploit that will get their attention. The game Among Us was a training sim. Well, I didn't know that, but it could be. I haven't played it. My friends tell me it's a lot of fun. So the Department of Homeland Security has warned. Okay, but just some of those things were sims. But anyway, the Department of Homeland Security has warned. What I think everyone knows is that there's a lot of these angry right-wingers with guns running around, and some of them have bombs and blow things up, and there's a danger of right-wing extremism and terrorism in our country. This has happened before. In the 1970s was an era of very high internal terrorism in America, which I think, well, it's mostly from the Vietnam War. But there were a lot of people setting off bombs, blowing up buildings. At that time, though, there was the hippies doing it, and they had a pretty strong ethic of not killing people. So they tended to warn people or hit the building when it was empty and stuff, and they killed a relatively small number of people, which is what the guy in Christmas, was it Nashville? He did the same thing. He announced to everyone to evacuate the area and then blew it up. So, but anyway, there's a lot of disgruntled people with weapons, crazy enough to go hurt people. And we can expect that to continue, I think, because the temperature is not going down anytime soon. In this spirit, this was Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez said she wanted to do something about Robinhood because she feels like they're hurting the small investors by blocking it. And then Ted Cruz says he'd agreed, and she tells him to go take a hike because Ted Cruz tried to get her killed 3 weeks ago, which is certainly true. Ted Cruz was one of the big guys that Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, and Trump sent that mob in, and they were specifically going there to kill AOC. She was absolutely on the list. And she had to hide in a separate location from the other Congress people because there are QAnon Congress people. There are people in Congress now coming out today who have threatened to kill AOC and Pelosi and who demand to bring guns on the place. And this is what happened in the Civil War. In the Civil War, we had Congress people pulling guns and shooting each other right in Congress. So it's not like we've never been here before, but it's not a good place where we are, this level of division and violence and craziness in our country. Anyway, so we're up to the official time. And wasn't that DHS Bowden's parents part of the bombing? Well, I don't know. I don't think I heard that one. But could have been. Yes, I think I heard there was, there was the underground weathermen blew up buildings, and there were other left-wing groups. In the 70s, it was the left-wing groups that were crazy and blowing things up. And now it's the right-wing groups crazy and blowing things up. So it's not like one side is more moral than the other, just they take turns being the problem. Anyway, so here we are. This is 125, the CISSP class. And like I say, this class has no hands-on projects, so it's all just lecture and quizzes and stuff, but you have to do it. To be a security professional, you pretty much have to get this cert. So we're just going to carry on with chapter 1 here. And I should have it running. Oh, I don't. All right, let me get it up. Keynote. There we go. And yeah, there it is. All right, let me share that. There we go. Good, good. I mean, I had a problem with my machine the last couple of times, but it seems to be better now. So, right, we're going to go down to one. We've already done down to 1C. We did this stuff last time. Right. Okay, so here's where we are. Now, these frameworks are a big deal. And I've had some students that went off and got jobs in security compliance and such that said they wish we'd spent more time learning these frameworks, but there's a lot of them and you can only go over them pretty fast here. But anyway, these things are really important on the job. And so there's a ton of them, Six Sigma and Octave and COBIT and NIST 800 series, and they all do pretty much the same thing. It's kind of nuts, but this is the way it is. And they all just ways of organizing your security program to make sure that you do everything you should be doing. So the ISO 27000 series is an international standard, and this is a long document with standards for maintaining a security management system. And it has many, many subsections. I've cut out a ton in the middle. Vocabulary, guidance for a security management system, monitoring, how to get digital evidence for security incident investigation, how to do e-discovery, just many, many, many things. It's like a whole encyclopedia of all these things you should do and best practices and what you must do in order to meet this level of compliance, to comply with this standard. Now, the Zochman Framework is common, and it was not originally security oriented. It was just to handle IT. So you had the communications questions, what, where, when, why, how, and who. And then you had executive, business management, architect, engineer, technician, and expert and enterprise. And this is just to try to organize your thinking to make sure you have considered all the parts of your company. Then the Open Group Architecture Framework is another one with 4 domains: technology, applications, data, and business. And the DoD Architecture Framework that's got these 8 views: capability, data and information, operation, project, services, standards, and systems. And you can probably get the idea already. They're all just trying to organize all the parts of your company and all the things you should be considering to secure your company. The British version of it, Modof, is very similar, breaks things up in strategic, operational, systems, acquisition, and technical, and then you get charts. Here's the Sherwood Applied Business Security Architecture, where you have contextual, conceptual, logical, physical, component, and service. And here you got assets, motivation, process, people, location, and time, and all these details. I say all these things can easily just turn into alphabet soup on you, but people really work hard to meet these standards and organize their business according to them. And it does seem kind of crazy that there are so many standards, but that's where we are right now. COBIT is one I hear a lot about in America. This is from ISACA, the same people that make the certification that CISM, although not the CISSP, the one I taught last semester. And so it's got these principles. You meet the needs of the stakeholders, cover the whole enterprise with an integrated framework, a holistic approach, and you separate governance from management. These are just ways of organizing your company to try to make sure that you do a good job. So you got principles, processes, structures, culture, information, services, and people. All just different ways of slicing up the same pie. And you have the NIST standards, the National Institute of Standards, part of the US government. And they describe the federal government computer security policies with these SP 800 documents, which are very much like the ISO 27000 ones. So you have the security plan for federal systems, cryptographic standards, cybersecurity education, and Internet of Things. And boy, since I've been working with a military contractor, they're using the NICE thing. And this thing is murder. It's like hundreds of pages long, baffling, confusing. If you do any work for the military, you come across these documents that are just sort of mind-boggling in their complexity. And so, by the way, now that they've defined the standards of what security should be, they're able to audit the Department of Defense and find out how secure they are, and they're completely manifestly far behind where they need to be, like 95% out of compliance. Because saying what you should do and actually doing what you should do are two completely different things. And so here's the world we're in. This is the XKCD about it. When you have a bunch of standards, what people naturally do is try to make a new standard to fix it, and now you have even more standards. That seems to be what's happening in the world of compliance. There's High Trust, a privately held company for healthcare companies, and they established this common security framework for health providers. And in my opinion, they should take a look at pacemakers. I believe I see a security problem there we were discussing earlier. And so they've got access control and human resources and compliance and asset management and business continuity management and incident response. All the usual stuff is here. Same stuff you'll see in the courses we teach. This is the modern world. These are the topics you must handle. And they got critical security controls, control your hardware, your software, manage your vulnerabilities, control administrator privileges, and use a secure configuration. These 5 controls would eliminate most vulnerabilities at companies. I've heard this from a great many security professionals in the field. And then you've got more of them down here: audit logs, malware defenses, securing your firewalls and such. And then another bunch down here where you do penetration tests and wireless access control and so on. Just a lot of good practices. There's many, many lists like this. Got this group, COSO of Treadway, and they've got essentially the same sort of thing going on here. Octave from Carnegie Mellon, heard of this one quite a bit. And this should be, here's Octave. So you establish drivers for your risk management, you profile your assets, you identify the threats, and then you identify and mitigate risks. And this is what I often tell students. Students often ask me questions like, how should I secure my web browsing? And I'm like, well, you can't just say that. You have to identify the threats, do threat modeling, and then decide what you want to prevent. It's not like there's one simple action you can take that creates security. Instead, you have to decide what risk you're worried about, and then you can mitigate that risk. So here's another one, ITIL, with a whole bunch of publications covering the same sort of thing from the Office of Management and Budget. I believe they got hacked twice in the last few years, for what it's worth. And that has a security component. And here's their core publications, with service strategy and design and continual service improvement. This is one thing of all these large standards always have a closed loop where you set some goals, you implement some policies to achieve those goals, you perform measuring to see how well you have succeeded, and then you update the goals. Oh, and I see I forgot to start my video. Or maybe I'll try it again. I got to pull a cable. should be this one. All right. USB is a miserable technology. I won't spend much time on it because it's pretty dark, but there, might be a little better. Anyway, all right. So here's Six Sigma, and it's a process improvement standard. So you define what you want to achieve, you measure whether you've achieved it, you analyze what's wrong, then you improve it, then you execute more controls and go on around the loop with continuous improvement. So that's their steps. And then there's the capability maturity model, which has got this for development, services, and acquisition. It all just sort of runs together for me. Various levels. The infill is ITIL v3, major revamp for there could well be, yes, ITIL v4. Would CISSP include other frameworks like MITRE? I'm not sure. I think MITRE is in fact going to come up later. So it's in there. You remember, you don't have to memorize all the details. You just have to sort of recognize the general features of these things. Anyway, so then you've got the capability maturity levels. And this will come up more later when we get to the Orange Book. There's initial level of maturity, then there's managed, then there's defined quantitatively managed, and the best is optimizing. And that's what I was describing about a closed loop, where you're constantly measuring your activities and constantly improving them. That's the highest level of maturity. And here's CRAM, Risk Analysis and Management from the UK. You identify and value your assets, find your threats, and then you prioritize countermeasures. All right. And anyway, I don't think that one's important right now. Anyway, there's a top-down approach. This is a big thing. The Orange Book is the US military one. We'll get to it later. It's a military security document, and it defines levels of maturity. We'll cover that one in a lot more detail. Not sure if MITRE would be included because it's a tax TTP. Oh, you're talking about the MITRE attack framework. No, I think MITRE attack framework is not in the CISSP. I've never seen it there. I think it's too new. They might include it in the next version. But yeah, that's right. I haven't seen MITRE used here. Anyway, so here's a big issue that you hear a lot in the CISSP. The right way to do security is top down. You have to have buy-in from upper management that agrees that it's time to improve security, and then you can do it. If you have someone at a low level in a company trying to implement security, it will always fail, because you can only improve security if you can allocate resources. You need upper management. And so that's a big deal. So let me get my Cahoots up. All right. That looks good. Yeah, all right. And so it's here. Oh, I know, I'm not actually in orbit. Yeah, and I'm trying to fix my screen when I get up. I forgot to put my screen up. Favorite, okay, CNIT 125, 1D, okay. It should be here. There it is. Good. There. And while that's happening, uh-oh. Looks like the share stopped working. Ah, that's going to be bad. All right. At least on my screen. Okay, I think it's no good. Let me see if I can do anything about that. One thing that works maybe is the whole desktop. Looks like it's going to do this nonsense again. Okay. Let me get rid of one of these, which is, I think, this one. Nope, not that one. Crap. This one. There. Okay. No signal. All right. Got this working yesterday. Now it's going to give me trouble again. Okay. I'm gonna, if I can get anything to work long enough, I'll pause the bloomin' recording. Ah, no. Now I've lost the, all right. The only thing that worked last time is to get rid of everything and go all the way back to here. Okay. Now I have everything crowded on one screen. Where's the Zoom? Okay. I would stop the recording if I could only find where the controls are. Aha! I finally found the controls. All right. All right. I see an idea here to get the webcam for Kahoot. Yes, that would be another option. Yes. This seems to work though. If I get rid of all the external monitors and go back to just one screen. Right. All right. Well, I can't see how many students there are anymore, but I think I'll just wait another few seconds and then we'll carry on. And okay. Okay. All right. 20, thank you, 29 participants. Well, I think there's only 22 using Kahoot. All right, I have to move the chat to where I can't see it to use it. All right, there we go. All right, I will cope. All right, which framework came from the International Organization for Standardization? All right, that's the ISO 27000, good. Which one from ISACA? Okay, that's COBIT, good. All right, how about the US federal government security policies? Okay, that's NIST. All right. And which one is used in healthcare? That's high trust. Good. All right. Let me see if I can record the winners. All right. CT, I assume those are real initials. Joseph. And Min might be a real name. All right, good. So let's get rid of that. All right, and now I think I can maybe run one of these without it failing. Let's see what happens. Because it's hard to go if I can't see the chat. Oh, no, I got this. All right, that's a good thing. All right, so let me see if I can share. This screen over here. Let me move this off. All right. All right, let's see if that works. Looks like it does work. All right, so this might get us through the day. So let me find my slides, which I seem to have vanished. Oh, I'm on the wrong computer. Okay. There we go. All right. Good. All right, let me take a look at the comments. Okay, nothing. Okay, good. Nothing requiring immediate attention. Okay, but good. All right, just making sure it's working. So we're down to here. So you have a security program life cycle, and you plan and organize what you're going to do with things like risk assessments. Then you implement controls and training and policies. Then you maintain them, and then you monitor and evaluate to see how well they worked. And then you can make improvement plans to go back and close the loop. So you see that here, the loop you go through forever to constantly improve. And you have to constantly improve just to stay in one place, because the IT industry keeps changing and the security threats keep changing. So this is what you need, or you will quickly become obsolete. So compliance is when you are obeying the rules, typically industry specific. So if you handle credit cards, you got to have PCI DSS compliance. If you handle medical data, you got to have HIPAA compliance. And there's a whole series of these for all different industries. So this is called governance, risk management, and compliance. And so governance plans it and runs it at a high level, setting your vision. Compliance is just like taxes and auditing. It's checking everything to make sure that you have done each of these 100 things on a list, and producing documents to prove that you have done that. And then you have risk over here, where you consider what to do. One thing that people often get very frustrated about in the world of security is that compliance is not the same thing as mitigating risk. In an ideal world, maybe it could be, but often people just do things like put in a web application firewall to meet compliance, even though it's not really very effective at lowering the risk at their company. And so you have to consider both of these things. And if you don't comply, there's legal risk. And, if there may be things you have to do to actually lower the real risk of getting hacked beyond compliance. There usually are. All right. So you've got different kinds of compliance. First, you have to obey the laws. If you're in a regulated industry like banking or healthcare, then you've got privacy requirements, all kinds of rules about how you handle personally identifiable information. The new European standard, GDPR, is much stricter, and the new California standard is an imitation of GDPR, and I think it's taking effect about now. So everyone is having to greatly upgrade their treatment of private information, or stop doing business in Europe, is what they talked about. But I don't think very many of them want to stop doing it here. Facebook is the prime example of violating privacy. They have over and over and over again, right from the very beginning of the company, promised their users privacy and then blatantly, deliberately, outrageously sold their data, and then apologized and promised not to do it again, and then done it again and again and again and again, until there's a lot of talk that Congress might actually do something to Facebook this time, because they just are the king of just totally violating privacy regulations and not caring. Anyway, Then you've got computer crime, of course. One simple way is when you're attacking the computer itself with a malware or a denial of service attack. The best joke was Mark, as read on Facebook, is Mark has read. Well, I can't understand it. But anyway, then you use your computer as a tool to steal data from a network or perform harassment like Gamergate. And in general, then you get the issue of attribution. Things done on a computer network, it can be difficult to tell who did it, and it's getting quite common now to track down who an attacker is. This turns out to be a whole lot easier than you might think it is. Very few people are careful enough to actually hide their tracks very effectively on computers. So you have the major legal systems. Civil law is where you have precedents and case rulings, and this is with laws and statutes. Then common law is what we have here, defined by cases and precedents. This is the major legal system present to us in this, relevant to the CISSP exam. And religious law in other countries like Sharia, not that much in America, and customary laws in other places. But the main divisions that matter to us in America are criminal law and civil law. Criminal law are the crimes like murder, where you actually send somebody to prison and where the police will hunt you down and arrest you, even if there is no victim complaining. They're very serious crimes with very serious punishment, and proof must be beyond a reasonable doubt. The civil law, tort law, is just arguments about money. And proof does not have to be that extreme. It just has to be a preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not. And the end result is not that anybody goes to prison. Typically, it's just that you pay some money. So you have to have someone complaining with some kind of argument that they deserve some money, and then you have a lawsuit, and then if they win, they get the money. So there's the big division of law in America. And so financial damages, you have statutory damages, which are fines to punish you just for having broken the law. You have compensatory damages, which is returning money that somebody actually lost due to your bad action. And then you have punitive damages, which is extra money they charge you just to set an example so other people won't do this again. All right. And then there is regulatory law, which has got a lot to do with these compliance standards. They pass a regulation saying you must do these things, and if you don't do them, you have broken a regulation, and there will be some kind of punishment in the regulation. So this is HIPAA and Federal Communications Commission and so on. All these agencies pass regulations. So the liability, we talked about this last time. You have due care, which is the prudent man rule. You should do what a prudent person would do, which is essentially obeying best practices. Due diligence is the management, making sure that people are performing the due care. You have intellectual property of many kinds. There are trademarks. There are patents, which are special processes that you have for a period of time to manufacture something and no one else is allowed to make it in that period of time. And you have copyrights. Anything you create is automatically copyrighted in America as long as you can prove that you created it on a certain date. If you were the first one to create it, it's copyrighted. Software is typically covered by copyright. You have licenses like the end user license agreements, and you have trade secrets and non-disclosure agreements. In other states, although thankfully not California, you also have non-compete agreements where you work for a company and you're not allowed to work in that field if you leave, so you're pretty much trapped. You're not allowed to do this in California, but you do it in other states. But non-disclosure agreements are everywhere. You learn proprietary company secrets and you're not allowed to leak them out. And so there's intellectual property attacks like software piracy, where you copy copyrighted software without paying for it. Espionage, such as stealing the source code for other people's products, and then setting up domains to catch traffic that was not intended for you. So you can register a domain that is a misspelling of a common domain, and you will get email and other traffic intended for that domain from people who mistype it. It's one of the many ways to steal information on the web that you're not supposed to get. So digital rights management is controlling who makes copies of things, and that's based on the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which defines the punishment for making unauthorized copies of movies and music and such. And unfortunately, there are import-export restrictions. A couple of years ago, I went to the first DEF CON China, and I was going to teach a workshop there. And when I showed up, there was people from the Blue Team Village, and they said, we need another workshop. I said, I'll teach a cryptography workshop. And one of the guys said, oh, no, you can't teach cryptography in China. I said, what do you mean? It's just ordinary, normal cryptography. I don't know any classified stuff. It's just stuff like AES and RSA. And they said, it doesn't matter. And I looked it up, and they're right. There are regulations of what you can export from America. And there was a time when you couldn't even export like Windows 7 and Pentium 4 processors and stuff because they were considered munitions because they had the ability to do strong cryptography. And there are restrictions. Exporting cryptography in the United States, there are categories of nations. Like B is pretty good, but D is a short list of countries that are subject to strict export control like China and Russia. And I can't teach cryptography in China, even though all my stuff is well-known public domain, ordinary stuff you'd find in textbooks. The Chinese would be happy, but the Americans might get mad at me when I came back home. Anyway, so a data breach is when your private data that you're supposed to keep confidential has been exposed. And cybercrime, of course, is any criminal act carried on with a computer. And one big argument from the FBI is what they call the going dark problem, how more and more evidence is created on things like phones, but those phones are encrypted and they have trouble getting the data off them. The privacy advocates say that, in fact, there's tons and tons of more data for the cops because there's security cameras everywhere and license plate readers and everything. And going dark is not a fair description of the situation. But anyway, there is that battle going on between the FBI and the cops that want to see more and more of the data and the privacy advocates that want to protect more and more of the data. And the two push back and forth. So privacy is the confidentiality of personal information. American privacy laws are very weak. There have been strong efforts to pass a stronger privacy law in America for more than a decade, and they've pretty much gotten nowhere. Europe privacy laws are much stronger. And one of the things about the European privacy law is if you collect data for one purpose, you cannot use it for another purpose without getting permission from the owner. And that is what the entire internet is based on. If you go to Amazon and buy a pair of shoes, the fact that you bought a pair of shoes is told to double click, who then tells it everybody. And now every website you go to knows that you just bought a pair of shoes, and you never really agreed to that anywhere. But it's legal in America to get your data for one purpose and reuse it for another purpose without telling you. And that's how they make all the money to drive all these free websites. So there's a huge argument that you don't want to have that kind of privacy here, or we wouldn't have all these great web services. Anyway, that's the game here. There is a strange law called safe harbor. The fact is, if you do business in Europe, your European data must be protected. And if you come to America, our standards are much lower. The data is not protected. And especially if you're not an American and you put data in America, then there are no protections at all. The government can just spy on it and everything else. So it's technically illegal for a European company to use Gmail or Yahoo Search or Amazon or any American company. So they keep passing laws to make a temporary exception because Europe doesn't have any comparable services to these. So the first one was called Safe Harbor. And there's another one, and these, they lost this because of the Snowden leaks, but they passed another replacement for Safe Harbor. It is, and all it is sort of a fake pretense, like saying, we will accept that America's probably being good enough about this data when you know they aren't, so you can do business. Yeah, Privacy Shield is the new one, approved, because it's not practical for businesses in Europe to not use American services, but there's no question that the way we handle data over here violates their laws. Anyway, all right. Now, a lot of these countries now cooperate on cybercrime. I was surprised. I went to a Secret Service meeting in the High-Tech Investigators Crime Association, and they were talking about prosecuting people in Russia and other nations. I was surprised the extent to which cooperation to punish cyber criminals has really gotten quite good. All right. And so HIPAA, the point of HIPAA was to make it so that if you are on a business trip and you go to another town and you get hit by a car, they will want to look up and see what drugs you're allergic to. And before HIPAA, all that stuff was just written on paper in a filing cabinet somewhere, and it wasn't findable in emergencies. So the idea was to have health insurance portability data. So you could get that data easily everywhere, and therefore you would have to protect it so it isn't just being lost everywhere. And that's why the first thing security people think when they hear HIPAA is that means we have to protect the data. But the primary purpose of it was to make the data portable. Anyway, that's the statement here. Protected health information must meet certain standards. It must be encrypted in motion, encrypted at rest, and so on. The Computer Fraud and Abuse Act is the main law used to prosecute hackers. This makes it a crime to perform unauthorized activities on a computer. And that kind of outsources the definition of what a crime is to the company when they decide what the purpose of a computer is. So if you put up a web server so people can shop, people who hack into it, instead of shopping, have apparently broken the CFAA. They have done something on there they were not authorized to do. The Electronic Communications Privacy Act protected electronic communications from wiretapping, but after 9/11, the United States passed the Patriot Act, which greatly increased the government's ability to monitor communications, lowering the protection from the previous act. The GLB Act forces financial institutions to protect information, and the Sarbanes-Oxley Act is supposed to make companies have true disclosures of their financial positions to try to deal with Enron, which was a huge fraudulent energy company. PCI, we've talked about a lot. PCI is not a law. It is just a self-regulation by the major vendors like Visa and MasterCard. They have defined standards that you must follow if you want to handle payment card information, but they don't really want to cut anybody off. So all the major breaches you've ever heard of are PCI compliant businesses. And they have now, for example, WEP, wired equivalent privacy, wireless encryption, was known to be broken in 2001. PCI let you continue sending credit cards over that until 2010, and you could easily get an extension into 2012. So there's a lot of people that feel like PCI is not strong enough, but there has been no success in passing anything stronger through the government because you can't really pass much of anything through our government lately. So if you have a breach and you lose data, then a lot of states have breach notification. And last I heard, there's no federal breach notification, although I think one might have happened since I wrote these slides. Anyway, then you also have to agree to these professional ethics standards. If you take a CISSP, you have to protect society, act honorably and legally, provide diligent and competent service, and advance and protect the profession. And one thing I found out, see, when I taught this class the first time, there was a bunch of angry semi-black hat type hackers in the security community that did not want anybody to teach the CISSP because they had lost their CISSP for unethical conduct. And their conclusion was the CISSP is stupid and it shouldn't exist and nobody should be doing anything rotten like teaching a CISSP class. So they decided to hack the college to try to stop them from teaching this class, and they sent a bogus ethics complaint. And I learned something. If you have a CISSP or even an associate of ISC squared, which is what I had at the time, anybody can submit an ethics complaint about you, even if they have nothing to do with you. You never worked for them. They don't work at your company. Anybody can just decide to file an ethics complaint on you, and you have to defend yourself. So I got one. They complained about me with complete nonsense and lies. And so I wrote a response, and they had a verdict of discharging the ethics complaint. But you do have to respond within 30 days or you lose your CISSP. So I was sort of annoyed that anybody can just do that at any time. They don't have to have any real basis for it at all. But the security community was pretty rough and tumble around 2012. There were criminals everywhere. The college was getting hacked. You know, it's calmed down a bit since then. But when I first started teaching this stuff, it was pretty controversial to teach this stuff in college. And there was a lot of idiots that gave me trouble. Now it's pretty much considered normal. Anyway, let's try some more Cahoots. Okay. That looks right. And we want 1E. So let me move this over. And 125. 1E. All right. That's looking like it's working. Okay, good. Good. All right. All right. I think that's, I'll give it a few more seconds. All right. All right. What's the new European privacy law? All right. The General Data Protection Regulation, something like that, GDPR. What laws are enforced by police? Yep. Criminal? Yep, that's it, of course. We all know from TV shows. At least that's how I know. All right. What law protects movies and music? Okay, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. All right. And what law ensures financial disclosure? That's Sarbanes-Oxley. Good. Ah, tough competition on Kahoot. Well, that's good. Let's see. I know who that is. All right. Oops, wrong one. This one. All right, B's going to have to tell me who they are if they want their points. But Joseph Mazer, it looks like a real name. All right. All right, so I think we ought to take a 10-minute break. I'm going to stop the recording and process it to put it in 2 chunks.